Hi, this is Ted at Valley of the Dolly. You can look at these two pictures. One is of a Toyota RAV4 and the other is of an Oldsmobile Series 70 from 1940. And you think, these two vehicles, they really don't have anything in common. But trust me, they do in certain ways, and we'll get back to that in just a minute. But first, we wanted to touch on this Esculent survey that recently came out that surveyed 1,000 students aged 15 to 19 and asked them what type of vehicle would they be interested in purchasing when it came time for them to buy a vehicle. And the results surprised a lot of people. One, these students said, the majority, 51%, said that they would like to buy a sedan. Only 31% said that they wanted to buy an SUV or a crossover, and only 14% said that they were interested in buying a pickup truck. Now you have to understand that the current market in the United States is 60% SUVs and crossovers, and it's only about 14% sedans. And the average buying age in the United States right now is 55 years old, so that makes it a Gen X purchaser. So in looking at these Gen Z potential buyers, you see that they're looking at sedans versus crossovers and SUVs, which are the flavor of choice right now for millennials and Gen Z, millennials and Gen X, who like to throw their gear in the back of the vehicle and head up to the park on a Saturday morning in athleisure and get their sport on and come back. And that's very different than what the Gen Zs are looking for in a vehicle. One, there's a big cost difference between that SUV and the sedan. So the average compact SUV is about $37,000 on average, where the average price for a car is about $27,000. So you have $37,000 for the average SUV compact, and you have $27,000 for the average price of a compact car. That's significantly different. That's $10,000 difference in price. If you look at the price difference between a midsize car and a midsize SUV, it is even more astounding because the average price for a midsize car is about $35,000. The average price for a midsize SUV is about $50,000 or over. That's $15,000 gap between these two kinds of vehicles. And that's a lot of money. So you can find a plethora of videos on YouTube talking about how expensive it is to buy a vehicle today in the United States. But that's because the majority of buyers all want to buy an SUV, and there's a large markup. So you understand why manufacturers really left the sedan market in favor of crossover and SUVs, because there's a huge profit margin to be had in the buyer of an SUV or a crossover, as opposed to having somebody buy a sedan. But Gen Zs tend to be very financially savvy. They've had exposure to a lot of information regarding saving money, how to shop and buy things, and how to spend their money effectively. And they're looking at sedans, and there's a number of reasons for this. One, a sedan tends to be lower, has a lower center of gravity, has less body roll. It tends to be more fuel efficient. It tends to be more sporting in its driving dynamic. And as we've noted before, it tends to be much less expensive, and it also tends to get better gas mileage than an SUV. So they're looking at sedans, and it's kind of ironic because if you look back at this Oldsmobile Series 70 from 1940, you find buyers coming out of World War II and coming back from the war, and by the mid-50s, when they're buying a lot more vehicles, they don't really want this kind of upright vehicle like the RAV4 or the Toyota Highlander from up to maybe 2023. They were optioned or offered with 3.5 liter 6-cylinder engines. This Oldsmobile Series 70, a 3.8 liter 6-cylinder engine. They both have a very similar ride height. You slide into the vehicle. They have very similar high roof lines. So you have a big, wide open viewing field from sitting inside that car. And what was replaced from it at the very end of the late 50s with the Hudson coming in, where you sat down inside of the frame in the car. This kind of ushered in the long, lower, leaner vehicles that we saw all through the 60s and the 70s, which only came into competition with the small economy cars coming in from Japan and from Europe, and then also later from the United States. That was really brought on by the oil crisis and high fuel prices that were found in the late 70s, 80s, and early 90s. And the minivan seemed like a really unique choice over buying that station wagon, because if you were a Gen X person, you grew up in the back of your parents' station wagon in the 70s and 80s, and that was quickly for millennials replaced by the minivan, and you grew up in the back of a minivan being shuttled to school, back and forth, being shuttled to football or soccer practice. And when you grew up, a Gen X or a millennial said, I don't really want a minivan, I don't really want a station wagon or sedan. I want something different. I want something that expresses my own personality. I want an SUV or a crossover. And that's why they've become so popular. But now, buyers who are coming into the market are looking at this and saying, my parents have an SUV. I don't really want an SUV. I want something different. You know what? I think I'll buy a sedan. I want something lower, sleeker, sexier. Yes, it's true, coupes and station wagons don't really register on this survey, but in the United States, station wagons are not popular the way they are here in Europe. And there really are very few coupes that are on the market, although Honda did just recently reintroduce the Prelude. And there is the Ford Mustang among a couple of coupes that are in the market, but right now there aren't a lot. But this is clearly an important sector of the market, and you see that because not just the traditional sedan suppliers like Honda, Toyota, Kia, and Hyundai, but you're also seeing now it's likely that Infiniti will be reintroducing the Q50 sedan, Buick will likely be reintroducing a sedan, and Ford has also made mention that they are looking at reintroducing a sedan as well in the midsize categories. And Mazda, I believe, too, may come out with a midsize sedan at some point also. So you're seeing a lot of talk about midsize sedans coming back to the market, and it is kind of a white space for a lot of these manufacturers. A lot of manufacturers who have left that sedan market can make a big splash by coming back into the market and reintroducing a sedan into those categories that they've left behind previously. And so I think over the it'll be a slow change, but I think you're going to see a lot more activity in the sedan market as the next generation of buyers come into the market and they're looking for something different than what their parents had, which was an SUV or a crossover. This is Ted at Valley of the Dolly. I look forward to talking with you again soon. If you like this content, please go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll talk to you again soon. Thank you. Bye now.